There is a room in a house in the mountains of northern Italy that has been locked for 41 years. Nobody has opened the door since 1985. The man who owns the house, an old furniture maker named Ezio, pays a locksmith to change the lock every single year, so that even he cannot get in on a weeknight. Inside that room is nothing dangerous. No secret, no body, no fortune. Inside that room is a woman's coat, a suitcase that was never unpacked, and a train ticket to a city he never let himself visit. Ezio didn't lock that door to protect a memory. He locked it to protect himself from one. Stay with me tonight, because before this video ends, I'm going to tell you exactly what was inside that suitcase, and why an 83-year-old man finally opened that door last spring, alone, at 2 in the morning. But first, you need to understand the one lesson that took him 41 years to learn, and that the old Stoics tried to teach the world over 2,000 years ago. You do not have to carry something just because you have not put it down. Welcome back to Stoic Mind. Get comfortable. Turn the lights down if you haven't already. Tonight is about the art of letting go, and it is not the lesson you think it is. We tell ourselves a comforting lie about holding on. We call it loyalty. We call it love. We call it discipline, or ambition, or just not being the type of person who gives up. But Marcus Aurelius, a man who ruled the largest empire on earth and still found time to write to himself in the dark, understood something most of us never stop to consider. One of the core ideas running through his private writings is this: everything we cling to, a title, a person, a grudge, a version of ourselves, was only ever on loan to us from the universe. Nothing was ever truly ours to keep. Not our youth. Not our health. Not the people we love most. Not even the breath moving in and out of our own chest right now, as you listen to this. That's not a line he wrote word for word, it's the thread that runs through page after page of his private notebook, what we now call meditations. Holding on is not strength. It only feels like strength, because letting go usually feels like falling. Think about the last time you held onto something long after it had already left you. A relationship that had quietly ended months before you admitted it out loud. A job you knew, deep down, would never become what you'd once hoped. A version of a friend who simply wasn't there anymore, even though the same face still smiled at you. We don't hold on because the thing is still alive. We hold on because letting go requires us to admit it's already gone. And admitting that, out loud, even just to ourselves, can feel like the hardest sentence a human being ever has to say. Seneca, exiled from Rome, separated from his family, stripped of nearly everything he'd built, wrote something that still lands like a quiet blow today. In one of his letters, he put it plainly: we suffer more often in imagination than in reality. That single sentence carries the whole idea of tonight's video, that the holding on, the replaying, the rehearsing, the refusing, hurts us longer and deeper than the original loss ever did. The loss happens once. The holding on happens every single day, on repeat, for as long as we allow it. Let's go back to that locked door in the mountains. Ezio was 29 in 1985. He made chairs and cabinets by hand in a small workshop behind his house, and he was engaged to a woman named Lucia, who taught piano to the children in the village below. They had planned a life together the way young people do, carelessly, joyfully, certain that time was an endless resource they'd never run short of. 3 weeks before their wedding, Lucia's mother fell seriously ill in a city 11 hours north. Lucia packed a small suitcase, kissed Ezio goodbye at the train station, and told him she would be back within the month. She never got on the train home. Not because anything terrible happened to her. What happened was smaller, and in some ways, far harder to accept. While caring for her mother, she reconnected with an old life she thought she'd left behind, old friends, old ambitions, a version of herself that predated Ezio entirely. She wrote him one long letter, gentle and honest, explaining that she had changed, and that going back to the village, and to him, no longer felt like going home. It felt like going backward. Ezio never replied to that letter. Instead, he took the suitcase she'd left behind, the one she'd packed for the trip and left half full at his house the morning she departed, and the coat she'd forgotten on the hook by his door, and he put them both in the small spare room upstairs. He locked the door. He told himself it was temporary. Just until he knew what to do with her things. 41 years passed. Here is the part of the story that most people get wrong when they hear it. They assume Ezio spent 4 decades in mourning, wrecked by heartbreak, unable to function. That's not what happened at all. Ezio built a full life. He married another woman, named Carla, 7 years later. He raised 2 children. He became, by every outward measure, a warm, respected, even joyful man in his village. He laughed easily. He danced at weddings. Nobody who met him would have guessed that a locked door existed at all. But every single year, on the same date in autumn, he called the same locksmith and had the lock on that upstairs room replaced. When his son finally asked him, as an old man himself, why he did it, Ezio gave an answer that the son later repeated to almost no one, until, many years afterward, a stranger heard it secondhand in a cafe, and eventually it found its way, quietly reshaped, into a story like the one I'm telling you now. Ezio said, "I was never protecting the room from the world. I was protecting myself from finding out that I had already stopped needing what was inside it." Read that again in your mind. He wasn't afraid the pain would still be there. He was afraid it wouldn't be. He was afraid that if he opened that door and looked at Lucia's coat and her half-packed suitcase, he would feel nothing. Or worse, he would feel that the version of himself who loved her that desperately had quietly, peacefully, moved on without asking his permission first. And somewhere in him, some old, stubborn part believed that if the pain ever fully left, it would mean the love had never mattered at all. This is the trap the Stoics warned us about, in language far older than Ezio's story, but describing the exact same wound. This is close to the central teaching of Epictetus, recorded by his student in the Enchiridion, the idea, in plain modern words, that we are disturbed less by events themselves and more by the judgments we attach to them. Ezio wasn't disturbed by a locked room. He was disturbed by what he believed opening it would say about the man he used to be. Here is where the art of letting go is most often misunderstood, and it's worth sitting with slowly, because this is the part that changes lives. Letting go does not mean forgetting. It does not mean the thing didn't matter. It does not mean erasing the person, the memory, the years, the love, the grief, or the version of you that existed inside all of it. The Stoics were never asking anyone to become numb. Marcus Aurelius grieved. Seneca grieved, deeply, and more than once, including for his own son. These were not cold men performing indifference. They were men trying to describe something far more difficult than numbness. You can release your grip on something without erasing that it ever existed. Think of it like this. Imagine holding a stone in your closed fist for so long that your fingers have cramped around its shape. The stone doesn't disappear when you finally open your hand. It's still there, sitting quietly in your open palm. But your hand is no longer in pain. You can move again. You can hold other things again. Letting go is opening the hand. It is not throwing the stone away and pretending it never existed. It is choosing to stop the clenching, the constant, exhausting effort of gripping something that stopped needing to be gripped a long time ago. Ezio's mistake, and it is one nearly all of us make in smaller, quieter versions, was believing that letting go and forgetting were the same act. He believed that if the pain softened, the love would be erased along with it. So he kept the wound open on purpose, changing the lock every year like a man sharpening a knife he was terrified to put down, because putting it down felt like losing the only proof that Lucia had ever mattered to him at all. But love does not require a wound to remain real. A garden does not need to keep bleeding to prove that something once grew there. Let's be honest about something most self-help content refuses to say clearly: letting go is not gentle. It is not a soft, glowing moment of sudden peace. It is closer to a small death. A quiet, private funeral for a version of your life that will now never happen. The relationship that could have been. The parent who could have apologized before they passed. The career you trained 10 years for and never got to have. The friendship that simply, quietly, stopped without ever getting a final conversation. You are allowed to grieve those unlived versions of your life. The Stoics never asked anyone to pretend loss doesn't hurt. What they asked, and what Ezio eventually discovered, 41 years too late by his own account, though not too late in any way that mattered by the time he understood it, is this: continuing to suffer does not bring back what was lost. It only guarantees that you lose the years you still have left, on top of what's already gone. Seneca put it plainly, we act as though we have unlimited time, spending decades protecting ourselves from feelings that could have passed through us in an afternoon, if only we had let them. Ezio didn't lose 41 years of love for Lucia. He lost 41 autumns of calling a locksmith instead of simply, finally, walking upstairs. Last spring, at 83 years old, 3 months after his wife Carla passed away peacefully in her sleep, Ezio woke at 2 in the morning unable to rest. He told his son afterward that it wasn't grief that got him out of bed that night. It was something closer to clarity, the strange, sharp calm that sometimes arrives right after we've lost someone, when suddenly all our smaller fears look laughably small next to the one enormous fact that time is not, in fact, unlimited. He walked upstairs in the dark. He didn't call the locksmith. He used an old set of tools from his workshop and, for the first time in 41 years, opened that door himself. Inside, dust had settled evenly over everything, undisturbed, like snow that had fallen indoors. The coat still hung on its hook. The suitcase sat exactly where he'd placed it, half-packed, forever paused mid-journey. He sat down on the floor of that small room, an old man now, and he opened the suitcase. Inside were folded clothes for a trip that never happened, a small notebook of piano lesson plans, and, tucked into a side pocket, the train ticket he had never let himself take, the one to go see her, all those years ago, before pride and hurt convinced him it was easier to lock a door than open a conversation. He sat with all of it for nearly 2 hours. And then, this is the detail his son remembers most clearly, Ezio began, very quietly, to laugh. Not bitterly. Gently. The way you laugh at a much younger version of yourself who took something so seriously that, decades later, looks almost tender in its innocence. He packed the coat and the suitcase into a single box the next morning. He didn't burn them. He didn't throw them away. He simply moved them to a shelf in his workshop, in plain sight, no longer locked away, proof that something had happened to him once, without the weight of pretending it was still happening now. The door to that room has stood open ever since. Somewhere in your life tonight, there may be a door you have been locking for far longer than you meant to. It might be a relationship that ended years ago but still occupies real estate in your mind every single night before you fall asleep. It might be a mistake you made that you have replayed 1,000 times, as if enough repetition could somehow rewrite it. It might be a version of yourself, younger, more certain, less tired, that you have quietly been mourning without ever naming it out loud. You do not have to forget it to release it. You do not have to pretend it didn't matter to finally stop carrying it. You are simply allowed, tonight, this week, whenever you are ready, to open your hand. The stone will still be there. What it once meant will still be true. But your fingers do not have to stay clenched around it for one more year, waiting for a permission that was always, quietly, already yours to give yourself. Let this be the night you stop changing the lock. If this found you at the right moment, let it sit with you as you drift off. And if Stoic Mind has been a quiet companion on nights like this one, consider subscribing. There's a new story waiting for you very soon. Sleep well.